Hey, folks, we're back. And as Alan said, AWS is previewing an IDE called Kiro. And it does a couple of things, but at its core, it's talking about vibe coding for the enterprise. And the two pieces of it are hooks that are essentially links to back-end services that are probably AI agents that will automate a series of tasks for you. You can program those yourselves. And then there's a thing called specs, which are the actual steps for building the application and more of the vibe coding, but it's kind of like guardrails built in so that you can't go wrong. And all you have to do is kind of like describe what you want to have happen, and the IDE will magically make this happen. Mitch, we've talked about vibe coding before, and we've kind of been a little bit dismissive of it as an enterprise tool, but I don't know, is something happening here?
Well, the big thing that's happening, first, Kiro is IDEs, CLIs are cool now, right? Everybody's coming out one, or they're acquiring one, or doing something around that, because that's the environment that software was created in. That's where developers spend most of their time. It's kind of the kitchen of software development. And what's interesting is Kiro, announced by AWS, is actually based on the open source of Microsoft's Visual Studio Code, VS Code, which has got 73 to 75% market share among developers. It is widely used. Even people that like Apple still develop on VS Code. So they've taken that open source, and what they've done is not just added another, I can generate code with whatever LLM model that you like to use. They've stepped back and said, well, yeah, we can do that, but let's really talk about what the developer's work is. So they've emphasized what they call Kiro specs, which is the upfront developing stories, turning those into requirements, turning that into design, that whole flow before you really start writing code, and laying out those plans, and then proving that with the developer, and then going to the coding phase and moving beyond. And of course, what you talked about, hooking into AI along the way to build and also to operate your code. So I think it's more of a holistic approach to IDEs than just a nice editor sitting alongside of a great natural interface to kind of guide your whatever you're asking the agent or the AI to do, LLMs to do on the back end. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this. There was an announcement actually just the other day by Perforce, who came out with Perfecto AI, which is a testing tool that instead of just generating tests, it actually monitors the requirements, the PDFs or the PRDs that you put together for a product, whatever you use to guide your requirements, or stories from Agile, and actually generates tests from that and analyzing code as code changes. So it's dynamically creating tests, not just here, create a bunch of tests for my code today. It's looking more holistically at the development process. That's the key trend to really get the productivity out of AI for software development.
Very good, Mitch. I got to tell you, people say, Shimmy, you have fun doing what you do. This whole vibe thing is exactly the kind of stuff why I enjoy doing what we do here, right? Let me just give a quick history of vibe coding on Textron Gang. I don't think it was more than 3-4 months ago. It was the first time maybe 6 months ago, we mentioned vibe coding. And Chris, I don't know if it was you or one of the other security experts said, nonsense, this stuff will never work. It's buggy, it's terrible, it's crappy code, it's low quality, it's a toy. About a month later, vibe coding's a nice little kind of hobby to do for a little home project. It's not terrible. A month later after that, a lot of people are vibe coding. There's some interesting stuff. It'll never work in the enterprise, mind you, but for little stuff, it's not so bad. Here we are, mark the date, July 15th. AWS comes out with an IDE for vibe coding for the enterprise. Is this the world we live in? Are we in a time zone? Chris, what do you say?
Well, that doesn't sound like something I would say, but if I did, I'll own that one, and it's wrong. I'm listening to Mitch, go through all that, and that sounds exactly right to me. And have the concerns I have for how AI is applied these days. That sounds like a logical structure. I'd love to spend more time and pick it apart and see exactly how they're doing some of the LLM stuff. But so that what I'm finding as folks who are spending a lot of time around me the last couple of months are finding out that I'll use the word semantic an awful lot, because AI doesn't describe at all what we're talking about here. I mean, any more than 700 other things. but they're semantic systems. And these are exactly the kind of use cases where you can understand that there's someone over here who has some characteristics and they're relating to something over here and building code. Mitch, as you're walking through that, I'm thinking through the steps and how that would be used. And again, I would bet that if I stared at it really hard, I would have a lot of criticisms, but it's in the right place, right? I haven't done a lot of coding and, I have used every language ever, but I try to avoid it. In the last 3 months, because I have these semantic partners, I write or copy and paste and occasionally edit piles and piles and piles of code. So everything I hear about Vibe matches my thoughts. It's not about can I put the commas in the right place? Is do I know why I'm doing what I'm doing? And that's the semantic string kind of thing that what we erroneously call AI is literally fantastically built for.
The term was actually coined in February, Alan, and it was an ex post by Andrej Karpathy, who was a co-founder of OpenAI. I think he was Tesla before that. And it was it's a kind of a nice little definition. Essentially, it's when you're vibing, you're like in the zone, right? And this is about being in the zone of creating software using AI. So you're leaning into AI, not writing code traditionally and kind of augmenting with some things that AI can do for you. It's like, let's maximize what you can do with AI and see what's possible. And that's what caught on about it, is it started to describe what developers and platform engineers and testers are starting to experience as they really lean into AI for their work. Is there's prompting, and then there's really vibing, where you're really using AI and some of the capacities.
So I see two use patterns around this vibe coding that just from my observations and my friends. There's the Chris Blask of the world, who I wouldn't necessarily consider a coder, a professional coder, who are vibing, right? They're vibing. And then there's real software developers, right? Real professional coders. They're also vibing, but I think they're vibing to be fair, and Chris, no disrespect to you, but they're vibing at another level.
Right.
Right?
As they should.
It's an accelerant no matter where you are on the curve, right? Whether you're, kind of more of a beginner who knows enough to be dangerous or a true expert, it's shifting you up the curve in terms of what you're able to produce, right? I mean, that to me is the big observation here, is like writing code and software development, software engineering. It might be the ultimate AI use case.
Well, that's what you would think from all the press and airtime it gets. It certainly is, and.
Well, but I think, Alan, the people are also like that's flowing through, right? I mean, you've heard about like a 50% decrease in the number of DevOps people in AWS as they're rolling this stuff out, right? You've seen some of the layoffs across the tech industry. I do think that we are getting that productivity because of this, and I think it's real enough that it's actually being reflected.
Google paid, what was it? Was it $3.5 billion or 2.5? No, excuse me, $2.5 billion, 2.4 to license the windsurf. We just spoke about this yesterday. $2.4 billion to license the windsurf software, and they hired the CEO, like the brains of the operation, supposedly.
And they were in pretty good shape before that.
Yeah,
right?
no,
I mean,
but
that was,
Gemini, they clearly wanted to make Gemini a better AI coder. But let me give you the other shoe that dropped on this. Some other AI company, they haven't released the amount they paid for it, but they bought Windsurf yesterday, right? I forgive me, I don't remember the name of this other AI company.
Everybody's got a piece of windsurf. Like if you didn't buy windsurf in the last week,
you missed out. Exactly. So, but we spoke about
there's cognition. Alan, cognition,
yes. Right. So we spoke about yesterday. Well, boy, they left windsurf for dead. They're picking the bones. Someone found those bones pretty tasty. And
windsurf's pretty smart. There's some smart people.
I have a couple of questions for Mitch. So does vibe coding mean like no code, low code tools or history? I mean, are we like moving on behind? Because, it seems like this is the same use case that we used to use for low code, no code.
Yeah, I think AI is the new low code, no code. And it's interesting talking to people that have low code, no code tools today, is they're in this bifurcated world of bringing in AI to start to do more of the work with citizens developers, but they also don't want to immediately cannibalize their current customer base have got things they've already built in the current tools. So I think that transition is happening. But I want to go back to what Dan said. I took the position about 3 months ago in one of our papers that the place to watch of what AI is doing is in the developer world. And not just because I like development and like developers and all that stuff, that's the tip of the spear. That's the landing dock on the shores to come into the country and go through immigration and be part of the development process. Developers love to innovate. They love to try new things. Not every one of them, but it's a very innovative crowd, very independent crowd, and they will find use for it. And they'll find use cases you don't even anticipate. And if you follow what's happening in development and how that's changing not only coding, but the overall work of the coders. I mean, I talk to very experienced developers that tell me I'm more tired than ever when I go home today because I'm thinking about this stuff at a much different level. It's just not like I need to convert this from JavaScript to this. It's I'm working up here and they're getting so much more done. So it is informing, I think, the rest of the market, at least in the software world, of what testing can look like, of what platform engineering can look like, what ops can look like. And I think the vendors who are smart will look at their own development teams as well as other development organizations as leading indicators of what AI is changing and how we create software.
I think you're so smart to call it the tip of the spear, Mitch. I mean, it's the people building AI that are applying it to their own work, their own kind of workload. It really is kind of where all the experimentation and the leading edge is happening. The kind of the ultimate client zero story. And now that's why I think it's so interesting to watch the companies that are building AI, because I think they're going to resemble what all companies look like longer term. I think, the things you see happening and the changes, in terms of workforce composition that you see in the companies that are really leading on the curve of building AI, that's kind of where everybody else is going to end up eventually, in my opinion.
All right, here's my prediction, right? So we started out from concept in February, and we're now at enterprise in July. All this stuff is a commodity by September. Nothing to see here.
And I think along with that, Mike, it totally equalizes people who are non-coders to the people who are big DevOps folks.
Well, that's that whole citizen developer thing. Chris, go ahead. I'm sorry, buddy.
No, that's okay. He is a person. So I'll give you an example of Vibecoding, right? In the last couple months, I have written hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shell scripts and Python scripts and so forth, because I said, I want to build a metabolic system. That's it. And step by step, my AI partner who knows how this stuff works, presents options, creates the code, I put it in, it run it works, doesn't work. Every single step that I know how to do myself faster. And I don't have the attention span. I've hacked everyone's code. I've written some myself, but as you say, I'm not a coder, right? That's a long, tedious job. Now I can surf in because, to your point, Kate, I know what I want. I know how it's done. I don't want to do the work. I don't have to. I guess to the term of this segment, I just know the vibe. I know what I want. And now I have a complex, we, Quietwire, have a complex system, mesh that is based on existing technologies that is supporting semantic processes in a autonomous human machine A2A fashion in 2 months.
I love it. Hey, I want to close this segment out with this, though. No doubt that the lens has been focused, or in terms of the AI market, on how AI is taking over coding, or has the potential to really rule coding and software engineering. But as humans, and we're all humans, I think here, unless someone's a deep fake, what it's doing in software coding, it will do in other verticals, whether it's medicine or law or manufacturing or what have you. That's why we spend so much time talking about AI. It's not just that we're geeks and this is the world we live in. This is happening. This is gonna send ripples and waves and tsunamis across every piece of it, and you can't lose sight of that when we talk. I've already spoken to some on my wife's family, to tell you the truth. They're not tech people, and they're like, yeah, this AI, it's a tech thing. They don't see it coming. As Bobby Bacala said to Tony Soprano. Do you think you even hear it when it comes? You should be hearing it right now. You're watching Tech Strong Gang.